to the print soft cover where we launch ebooks. And today we have with us Sutapa Mukherjee, who is a very well-known journalist who has worked with various outlets. And she's here with her book on Ayodhya, which is called Ayodhya Past and Present. Welcome, Sutapa ji, to the print.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure indeed.
So you have written this book on Ayodhya, and Ayodhya has been an interesting, it's a historical town, and recently because of the Babri Masjid and Ram Temple issue also, it's been in the news for several years, for decades actually. And it's get difficult to write on a subject that's well known, that is being talked about. So how has been your journey of writing the book? What is the book about? Can you please tell our viewers about that?
First and foremost, I would like to tell you that it really wasn't that difficult. I mean, I didn't find it that difficult because while I was sending in my proposal for this book, I browsed a few others on Ayodhya, and I realized that most of the authors, they're very eminent and very well-known authors, they have written a lot about the mega picture, the impact Ayodhya has had on Indian politics, and so on and so forth, right? And I realized not much has been written about, or let's say people really haven't got to know about the Ayodhya Vasis, about the people of Ayodhya. And during my journalism years, and when I would visit with a particular story in mind, I love to interact with these locals. There was something in them, something very simple, something, typical small town, a very small town temperament, very welcoming, very warm. So I said, why not start talking to them? Why not write a book around these people? And I didn't want to limit it to just the people of Ayodhya. I also wanted to bring in the human part of those people who were very much a part of the entire Ram Janmabhoomi movement. So I can say it's a book where we talk more about the people, the human side. It's a human interest kind of stories.
Absolutely. And as you rightly said, that this talks about the people and how their everyday lives were, affected due to the conflict. So how do you, when you were visiting the town, when you were having these conversations with the people, what do you observe about the equation of people from different communities in that town over the years?
So if we really go back into the past, if we see, if here let's talk, I would like to talk about the two most important communities who are always addressed when we talk about Ayodhya, right? That's the Muslims and the Hindus.
Yeah.
So when we go back into the past means I'm talking about pre-90s or perhaps even before the 80s. The Muslims and Hindus were living just like I would be living with my neighbor or you with your neighbor, So, of course, it wasn't a very all-pleasing interaction all the time. I mean, we do have conflicts, once in a while, which is a part of human nature. And it was just there and that much. But after when they really start expressing their angst and the experiences, what I realized is after 6 December 1992, they have developed a certain mistrust with even the local Hindus. That trust, that faith, because it was during that period that the local Hindus had also were drawn into this entire movement, and they also, kind of with a lot of enthusiasm and being a part of that entire movement, they also kind of went against their neighbors, against their friends belonging to the minorities, the Muslim community. So, like you say, they say that it's like a mirror, the trust. You have a Beyonce song also, and if it breaks, the cracks always remain. So yeah, that's the case with the Muslims out there. And the Hindus, after 30 years, most of them have become householders. They're running their own business. So when they reflect back on their roles, they talk of it as if it was an adventure for them, something excitement, a big mela where they wanted to participate. And perhaps they didn't really understand the meaning, the impact it would have in the entire nation or the negative outcomes of that one day. And today, I think the Hindus are very anxious and very worried about the town turning into some mega tourist center. Where do they go? That's their concern also.
And would you like to recall some of the anecdotes that you found interesting while interacting with the people that you may have featured in the book also, even if it's not a part of the book, something that really
Okay, so when I talk of Ayodhya, I didn't mention so far one section that I find very interesting out there are the sadhus in Ayodhya, right? The mahants. So you have the mahants who head the mart, and then you have a large number of sadhus who you find everywhere. And the sadhus or the sannyasins of Ayodhya, I find them pretty much different from the ones that you meet elsewhere, who are very, who kind of talk to you from a pedestal and who have this thing of, preaching and so on and so forth. But here the Mahants and the Sadhus are extremely friendly. You just feel all right. They're wearing saffron. Of course, they know their Sanskrit very well. They know the Ramcharitmanas very well. It's all on their fingertips. But while interacting, you feel they're just one of you. They crack jokes and they love to talk about their lives. They're very candid with the expression, so much so that sometimes you can't even use the words that they have against somebody. There's no control over their language sometimes. And yes, among the Mahants also, there's a lot of competition. They try to, they're very they don't appear as people from a different world or different school. They're also very human, like you and me. And like this one, since you asked me to relate in one of the incidents, I think I mentioned it in the book also. So there is this Mahan Dharam Das, and he's very interesting, very chatty. He doesn't know how to read or write English. And when I met him, he took out these bundles of papers. And he said, I have all the papers with me and this and that, all the legal documents. So much so that even the district magistrate sahab, humni paas aate hain, humse paper lete hain. So, that's self-importance thing. You always try to sell that also, yeah. Somewhere they are very interesting and fun people to sit with.
Absolutely. It sounds interesting. And when we talk about Ayodhya and the story beyond the conflict and the story of the people, there's another documentary that comes to my mind. It's by another veteran journalist, Shabnam Virmani, which is called Ajab Sheher. So because I remember I saw it when I was about 3-4 years ago, and it was shot about a decade ago, and in which she also goes around and talks to people about their experiences, how they understand Ram or how they understand the whole conflict. So I think, but your book, I guess it's the most detailed account of those interactions, I think. And so that's why I want to ask you that people who are interested in politics and culture of Ayodhya, how will this book enrich their understanding in that?
So if I can call it like a portrait mosaic, where you have tiny pictures, and then finally you create a portrait. So
right.
This would be something like a photo mosaic, if I can call it, where each piece would add value to the larger picture. So what happens for many of us, and even for me sometimes, is that when you are so struck by one incident and the impact it has had in a bigger frame, in a mega picture, that you lose out on finding out what the micro details have been like. And
Mhm.
whether it is history or politics or anything, uh, it's we the people, it's the people of the place, people connected to the place who've actually contributed to creating that big picture, right? So I think it's a lot about lived realities, and uh, they would find it interesting, and it would add value to their work or whatever they're pursuing in their fields, historians or
Absolutely.
other academicians. Yeah.
Uh, and you have written in the book that you have been frequenting the town for many years, since 1998, if I'm not wrong.
Eight,
And
nine.
right. And so, what is Ayodhya to you beyond this conflict, and why you chose to write on this town? What was your, motivation behind it? Why do you feel so attached to this?
So Ayodhya, I used to go from Lucknow, and Ayodhya is like a small, at least even now it does look like that. It's a small town. I don't know if you
Hmm.
visited Ayodhya. It's a small town, and it's okay. We can call it a fort here. And it's like a mix between a town and a village. Okay, the vibes are completely of a village,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So you see women all dressed up, and especially if it's a Tuesday or a Saturday, they're wearing yellow saris, orange saris, and coming from neighboring villages and districts, and all out to please their Ram and Hanumanji in those colors, right? And there are these shops selling a lot of things for puja, and the people of Ayodhya, they talk Awadhi language. When you sit at a tea stall, they start talking to you. They're very friendly, and there's a sense of innocence about the people out there. And like I just told you, like even the sadhus over there, they're not, they don't talk to you from a pedestal. They're not there to give you gyan. They also are very friendly. So there's something very, I see a lot of truism there, if I can call it that
Hmm.
way, and a lot of innocence, um, a lot of being very natural, very organic. The way they talk to you, they're not put on, and they're not. So that's one thing that really kind of draws me towards Ayodhya and its people.
And about communal harmony, because you were talking about it earlier, and the town and your interactions with the two major different communities, which are the Hindu and Muslim community. Do you recall any incident of practically seeing that communal harmony despite what was happening on a larger scale on political level? uh, if you could recall any of that.
So, the story of Hashim Ansari, the first litigant, okay, from the Muslims, and Paramhans, okay, uh, the sage. Their story is, I think I mean, I really even wish to write their story, and I feel the children of the next generation should get to know their story. So it's very interesting, and most journalists would have written about them also. Both of them are no more. So they belong to different communities. They were fighting for their own religious spaces, or and so on and so forth. And but they were best of friends, right? So they would go to the local court, and they were not rich, so they would share the amount and travel on the same rickshaw, get off at the court premises, have their chai, have their bidi, then go over there, stand against each other, fight with each other, all right, for their religion, and then end of it. That was The end. Then they would come back together on the same rickshaw, laughing and chatting. So I've noticed that, though I would say that, like while speaking to a lot of Hindus, I've seen them really making efforts to reach out to their Muslim friends, with whom they must, as children, they've grown up together, they've played together. But then there is, like I mentioned earlier, like, you have the mirror and the cracks are there. So somewhere the Muslims are there and they prefer staying together now. If there is a space where the Hindus are in majority, they would rather shift to a locality where the Muslims are in majority. And they kind of, that openness is lacking from them, though the Hindus are always willing. And I think that's because the Hindus wouldn't have felt like victims, right, in 1992. So for them to reach out is easier, but for them to accept, it's taking time.
Okay. And where do the women feature? Because, we sometimes see that during these historical political events, women are somewhere in the backdrop. So in Ayodhya, in your understanding, how are the women of Ayodhya? How do you see them? What has been your interactions with them?
Right. So, honestly speaking, I did speak to a few of these women, and they're married to some of these players during that time. And they don't have much to say, though they all are extremely fond of Ram Lalla. Every house has a picture of Ram Lalla or, Hanumanji. And
Right.
yeah, in fact, while I was, writing the book, I also felt that it is important that, the women are brought out. There have been many women in the movement also, right? And there have been women journalists also who covered 1992. And there are women in Ayodhya also. So maybe we can think of something after this, taking just the women of Ayodhya, who knows?
That's interesting. And as a women journalist, how was your experience of, did you face any difficulties or any sort of inhibitions? Because I remember there was an incident in the book where you were telling that you had to change your name. You had to choose a Christian name also when you were visiting a household. So any challenges that you faced?
See, that is one place where I met a lot of women. They were stringing the flowers together for garlands, which are sold in different temples and for weddings and so on and so forth. Interestingly, I'll just divert a little before I answer your question. A lot of Muslim handiwork or handicrafts are used in the temples, from the clothes to the garlands to the clogs and so on and so forth. So I had visited this house where I saw a number of women sitting in the courtyard, right, chatting and stringing the flowers together. And they looked at me a little suspiciously, like, who's this suddenly who's just come and, she's trying to make herself comfortable amongst us. And because they were a little stiff, I decided, I don't know, something in me told me, give them another name and they may just open up, right? And I fudged up this name. And then they really opened up. So that
Okay.
maybe they don't want to talk easily, or maybe they're still not comfortable talking to a Hindu. I don't know. But that was something, I did it on my own and it worked. So,
Okay.
but otherwise, being a woman journalist and in Ayodhya, no, I didn't ever feel, that, okay, because I'm a woman, I can't do this. The people are extremely cooperating.
Mm. Okay. Okay. All right. And any learnings that you had during this journey of visiting this place for many years, under trying to understand it beyond the headlines. But so,
Mm.
what do you feel that you have? How have you grown throughout the process? What has been your takeaways from this?
Um, Most importantly, I feel I've always thought this is important, and
Mhm.
while writing this book and working on it, it kind of reiterated the same thought. I think it's very, very important for us to understand between the lines.
Yeah.
and not to take everything at face value sometimes, which we tend to do. And we I also feel that we take people for granted,
Mm.
right? Which is really not fair. For example, I'll tell you, like, this town is transforming so fast,
Mhm.
right? But none of these people have signed for it, and they feel very left out. Okay, we are
Mm.
telling them that it's going to be a mega tourism spot and you're going to gain out of it, and so on and so forth. But are we really looking at the anxiety, the emotions they are going through? We're not. So personally, I feel, while writing this book, again, I've always believed in it. It just kind of accentuated that belief that, uh, we really, it always helps to understand human emotions and, thoughts, and where do the thoughts come from.
Mm.
And I think that really helps in so many things around us, even our interactions, the way we respond, and so on.
And as you were saying earlier, also that you have seen how there is some sort of, concerns. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but now the temple is going to be constructed and their lives are fast changing. What are their hopes or aspirations or concerns with this when the temple comes? What do they talk about? How do they talk about it? Is there an excitement, or is there
You know,
some sort of concern? Yeah.
yeah, so there is some excitement.
Mm.
I wouldn't say it's so visible and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're excited and happy. No, on the contrary, they're very worried. I'm talking about the Ayodhya Vasis, if I can call them that. Okay, the local
Right.
people, the Mahans who have kind of put up a show and have felt that, okay, we are the Mahans and so on. They are also feeling a little sidelined because it's a trust now who's taking all the calls.
Mm.
And the locals, like, roads are being widened, which has to be done if you're going to transform it. And shops are being pulled down. And the compensation given these people feel is not going to help them rebuild what they're losing. And so there's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety among the people. I mean, like I said, like, it's like an unsolicited sacrifice that they're making.
Mm.
So, and when you talk to them about ye to bahut acha shehar banega and it'll be good for you, so they are like, how do you say it'll be good for us? People, we don't have the money to put up a huge shop here. We don't have that money. So people from outside are going to come, and it's as if they feel that their shop or their business or their whatever they own, it's going to be
Mm.
taken away by some outsider.
Mm. Mm.
So
So that's
that
the is there.
existential crisis, if I may call that, call it that. You can sense it. It's really there.
Okay. So to the reader of your book, what would you like to say to them? What are the disclaimers before they go on to indulge in the book from the author herself?
Okay, so like I've been telling you, and you've also read it and you've understood that. Uh, I would like them to read it as a book that tells them about the people of Ayodhya, and also tells them about the people who've been in the movement. Some of them who I spoke to at length, and something very interesting that I observed, or anyone does, is when these people are in a group. I wouldn't like to take names. The book, of course, has mentioned some of them. They're different when they're leading a group, or when they're trying to encourage a group to do something. They all get de-individualized, you know. But when you talk to them one on one, they come out as very, very nice people. So you can't label and tell them, oh, just because this guy has done this, he's really not a nice person. And the book also tells the readers about what happens towards the end of the book, in fact, more so in the epilogue, what happens to a town when it doesn't go through different stages, like from tier 1, tier 4 to tier 3 to tier 2. See, Ayodhya is not going through that, right? So if I have been in Lucknow and my in-laws have spoken to me about, say, my grandfather-in-law would have spoken about Lucknow, that Lucknow was like this. And my in-law spoke about Lucknow being a little different. And I saw Lucknow. When I was in Lucknow, I could cover the entire town on a rickshaw or even on a bicycle. But my children, I'll tell them about that Lucknow. But now they see Lucknow is like a mini Delhi in its vibes, right? So every generation sees the transformation. Yeah, one generation is, moving from, let's say, a 4 tier to tier 1, or gradually towards a mega tourism center. So, the kind of angst the people go through when such changes take place.
Yeah.
These are the things. To read it more, keeping their focus on the people and their feelings
And the Ayodhya beyond the headlines.
Absolutely, yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Sutapa ji, for sharing about this book. I have read it and I found it to be very interesting because, as we talked about, that it is something that has not been very widely covered, and it tells the story of Ayodhya in a different light. So thank you so much for being here with us, and best wishes to you for the book.
Thank you so much, Unnati. It was really nice sitting and having this chat with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.